Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. It's your friend James Shaw. Trust you're doing okay. And I'm excited about today's interview because we're going to talk to somebody that's impacted every single person in this community, somebody who's a big part of this community, who helped launch this community with us and has had a lasting impact on us for a long time. And that is our friend, Jay Papasan. Jay, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. And hello, all of my friends in the pivot world.
Thanks for being here. We're celebrating because 10 years ago now, this book came out, The One Thing. And that's a big deal because you've sold, I mean, not just a couple copies.
Yeah, we just crested the 3 million sold mark, and we've got, I believe, 42 translations. So it's really made its way around the world. It's like an author's dream, right? That you put all that hard work into something, and it really found a great audience around the world.
When you and Gary sat down to work on this project, is that what you thought? Like in your mind, was this going to have such an impact that it's had? Is that even a conversation you had?
Gary, he always thinks big. So like we wanted to have a #1 bestseller, and we wanted it to be a long running bestseller. And so Gary always asked the question, how can we make this timeless and not just timely? Because a lot of books show up and they're hot for a hot minute and then they're gone. So we did actively ask, how can we write something that's kind of feels like it has a chance to be a timeless classic? But I'll be honest, neither of us were thinking 1 million copies. That's really hard to predict. There's a lot of great books that get there and a lot that don't.
Yeah.
But we did everything we could.
You still see it in airports. You go around airports, it's still sitting on shelves in there. I'm sure this happened to you too. I'll sit down and somebody next to me is reading the book on the plane. So pretty cool. All right.
That by the way, if you're ever get the privilege, James, and you're one of those people that might, and I'm sure there's plenty of people in this wonderful group that might share their gifts with the world in the form of a book. The first time you see a book you wrote in the wild is magic.
I bet.
I saw the first copy of The Millionaire Real Estate Agent literally in a dining area of a grocery store here in Austin. I was like, look, he's reading that book. And I saw The One Thing in the wild, not at a KW event, on an airplane. I was like, oh my gosh, there's someone right across the aisle reading that book. So
that's pretty cool. Do you go and say, hey, I'm Jay, I wrote it, you want me to sign it? I mean, do you ever do that? You just let it roll?
I always try to. I just say, how are you liking that book?
Yeah. Find out they like it first.
Yeah. It's like, oh, it's really boring. It's like, yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah. Whoever wrote it's a loser. Okay. I've got some questions from it because it's had a big impact on me and our KW family and a lot of people in here. And I kind of break the book into chunks when I think about it. Okay. Obviously, you start with the 6 lies. And this is a big popular one that people will bring up, I'm sure, when they sit and talk to you. And we hear it, right? You can't multitask, and multitasking is a lie, and everything matters equally is a lie, and all of these things. Of the 6 lies, is there one that really resonates with you, or you think would really help our people if they recognized it, would ultimately help them?
The balanced life one was very important to me. So I think it depends on where you are. We did try to write them in order of significance. Like there's a thread you can pull through all of them, right? So if you're only going to get one right, let's make sure that we tackle everything matters equally as a lie, and then we can work our way through. But on a personal level, this idea of balancing and counterbalancing, because if you're trying to do extraordinary things, you will get out of balance. And we write about it later in the book, The Thieves of Productivity. I'm kind of an introvert, so I don't have a trouble saying no to people. That's not my problem. It's chaos. And so for me, when I'm out of balance for a long time, my world, I have a great fear of chaos. It gets very chaotic. And I just want to take a mental health day and straighten things up. So that idea of counterbalancing was very important for me. And now I've got rituals. Like I batch my emails in the morning. I batch my emails at lunch. I batch my emails at 5. So I'm not always in my inbox. And I'm free to be present with the people I'm around. Like I've found strategies, thanks to the journey with this book, to kind of keep the chaos at bay so I could be present with the things that matter more.
And then you guys talk about it too, there's times you might have to go extreme if your situation warrants it. So if you got a health issue, you're going to go extreme in your personal world and things are going to get out of balance. Right now, we might have agents that they're looking up as the 4th quarter has ended and going, hey, I'm way behind my goal. I'm going to have to go extreme the next a month or two to get back on track, and yet recognizing there's no such thing as a balanced life. The 6 lies are: everything matters equally, multitasking is a lie, a disciplined life is a lie, willpower is on will call, balanced life, and then big is bad. And I want to go to big is bad next, because when I think about this book, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, when I think about this book, I think it exposes a challenge people have, especially in our industry, which is living so much in the right now without a thought or understanding about ultimately where do you want to go. Really, success is the inverse of that, kind of having an idea of ultimately where you'd like to be someday and chunking it down. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yes. And I mean, if there's like the life skills around goal setting to the now, I want to go somewhere significant with my life, 5 years, 10 years down the road. How do I behave this week? Like, that's a really hard question to answer. And the gifts of that process, simplifying how to go backwards from a future self, a future outcome, and kind of simplify the answers. Like, I love that framework. And that is one of the key lessons of the book. For me, it's just like asking the question, knowing it needs to be an activity and time blocking it. And that's the engine, right? That's running, right? You're asking your one thing, you're working it. But in order to drive the car in the right direction, you've got to have this idea of somewhere you're headed and know how to kind of get there in the present. So I don't know. There's a few pieces that lock together in interesting ways, and I hope simple ways for people to kind of actually put them to use in their life.
That's the thing about this book that I love about it. I did hear you and Gary talking once about the 5-star reviews and the 1-star reviews all say the same thing, that it's overly simple. But isn't success overly simple?
If it's going to be repeated, it is simple. That's a great truth that Gary has just beaten into my head, is that people can't live in complexity for long. You've got to simplify it. If it's really important, get the message simple to you and your people. It's not just a leadership message, it's a self-leadership thing. And in our masterminds last week, I don't know if you got to be there or not, but that was our call to action. Go look at your workflows, right? How you go on appointments, how you market your listings, whatever it is. And if you can't put it on one page, it's too complex. Simplify it so that we can take more action instead of doing all the steps to make one action happen.
Keep it simple, and you create a greater space for you to win. Okay.
Yes.
The thing I think I hear the most when I talk to people about your book, and you tell me, is the 66 days. That this is this number that sticks with people, that, okay, I want to build a new habit at 66 days. It's not actually what the book says. The book is like it's 16 to 234 days or whatever the actual number is, but 66 is a sweet spot. What is it that you hear the most when people come up and talk to you about the one thing? What is it that they say resonates with them the most?
So there's different classes of people that I get to encounter. I think a lot of the really extraordinarily successful people, the CEOs that bring us in for training, I mean, I've gotten to interview multiple billionaires thanks to this book, is that they see that process of identifying that one thing that they are all in on and giving it really the majority of your resources and focus and time and energy, that was their recipe for success too. So I hear a lot of successful people going, wow, you really kind of captured it. I've tried to teach this, but this helps me a lot. A lot of people remark on the habit, because also habits are very hot right now. Thank you, James Clear, and Atomic Habits. But since COVID, people have worked on themselves. And the idea that it takes longer than a lot of people preach is helpful to a lot of people. So I just hear a lot of people that it simplified their life. They got clear. That to me is the first step always. You can't live this book if you don't have clarity about where you're going and why you want to get there. Ultimately, that decides everything that comes after.
Okay, so that then goes into the key kind of thing about the book, which is the focusing question. Mm-hmm. And that is, what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it makes everything else easier or unnecessary? Can you walk us through that and how you and Gary came up with it and how vital that is to your success?
For years, I thought this was in the book, but we cut it when we had to shorten the book right before publication. The origin story is when Gary would be doing coaching with our top agents and franchises. and he'd be talking to, say, a top franchisee, and you end the coaching call, which I'm sure a lot of people here have experienced because they're in coaching, right? So, James, what are your commitments for next week? And you'd list out the 3 or 4 things that you would get done. And Gary's frustration was they would come back and they would do some of the things, but they rarely would do the most important thing. And out of kind of frustration, and you've seen Gary, he can be a little fiery, right? When you kind of hit the right button. In frustration, he'd be like, James, if you can only do 3 things this week, and then you'd come back and do the last 2. If you can only do 2 things this week, you do the second one, but not the first. And it was really in frustration. He said, if you can only do 1 thing this week, what's it going to be to move towards your goals? And he asked for 1 commitment. And his surprise was that when people only had 1 thing on their list, they always did it. There's no place to hide. And the really cool thing was all the other stuff that kind of went with it, they tended to do. But because they had only 1 thing to focus on, they did the most important thing. And so he just kind of went all in. And that's where the question was born, right? Of all the things that you could do, what's the 1 thing that you can do that'll make everything easier and necessary? So it evolved over probably a decade, but that's the origin story. And it's just powerful. You ask a powerful question, you give yourself a chance to have a powerful answer for your life and your work.
You end up giving a probably pretty honest answer. The one that you know is right, but don't want to say, because if you commit to it, then you have to do it. So now when you narrow it down to 1, you really don't have a choice. And now you know your first domino, right, to continue what you talk about in the book. Okay.
A wise man told me once, when you look at the list of things that you have to do, a lot of times the thing that creates fear, it's not because it's something that should create fear, it's because it matters. And you're afraid about what it might say about you to yourself or to other people if you try that thing and fail. But you know this, and I think a lot of our listeners know this, failure are the paving stones, right? Failures are the paving stones to success. You've got to go for that thing that matters, and then give yourself some grace. You may fail the first time or the second or the 10th, but because you know it's the most important, you've got to stay at it until it's done.
I mean, really, nobody succeeds at anything the first time. And knowing what's important and be willing to work on it leads you on a path to mastery, which is really important.
Just go watch a kid trying to walk. They just face plant. It's painful to watch.
Right. Yes.
But that's how they learn. That's how we all learn.
Right. A misconception about the book is it's not 1 thing.
Right.
It's 1 thing at a time, and there's multiple areas of your life. This book is not necessarily a business book. This is a success in your life book. Page 114 is the 7 circles. You told me once that's the only page number you remember is page 114.
That's the only place I can quote my book. You just stole my thunder.
I'm sorry. Okay. We'll stop and redo. But page 114 is the 7 circles. This is a thing that you can take the concepts from the 1 thing and apply it to every area of your life. Can you walk us through that?
And I just want to highlight that. I mean, I think a lot of people say, I've got an approach for success in real estate, or I've got an approach for success in health. And you can end up having a very complicated life trying to follow all of these approaches. The genius of this system is that it's a very simple approach that you can aim at whatever matters to you. And so Gary and I, we literally were just having a philosophical discussion. It's like, this is a lot more than a business book. I remember exactly where we were sitting in his office. And I was like, I wrote down last night the areas that I felt like I could have used this in my life. And I started rattling him off. And he goes, let's just go back to Quantum Leap. And because, Gary, this is the source, his course, Quantum Leap, touches so many things. And we started riffing. And well, if we could only apply it to 1 area, what would it be? So that's kind of the 12 o'clock position on that graphic on page 114. What's the 1 thing for my spiritual life? And then what's next after that? And for us, it was our physical health, right? Because if we don't take care of it, and I'm going to say health, because if you've got a new edition of the book, it just says health, because thank you, COVID, we now know that your physical and your mental health matters. Mm-hmm. So what's the 1 thing I can do for my health and well-being, right? Because if you don't take care of your body and your mind, the foundation for everything that comes after. The third one is a little controversial. What's the 1 thing for my personal life? And it's hard for a lot of us to do if we're entrepreneurs, to take care of ourselves when we're so busy taking care of our business and the people we love. But, you know, the old saying in the airplane, if you don't put the mask on yourself, you can't help the kid, right? That's the reason we put the mask on ourselves first. We got to do a little self-care so that we can be there for the people that matter. And then you get to your relationships, and then you get to your job, your business, and your money. So we just tried to, again, using the clock as a metaphor, starting at 12 o'clock and working our way around, you know, what's the one thing for your spiritual life, your health, your personal life, your relationships, your job function, your business, if you own one or in one, and then your money. And there are other buckets. Maybe someone here, like the one thing I can do for my pets, I would file that under key relationships. But maybe that bucket is so big, that's what matters to them. You get to decide. But I think you can say, figuring out what your one thing is in the big areas that matter, you're just a few habits away from having an extraordinary life, right? Yeah. If you're doing one amazing thing for your spiritual life and one amazing thing for your health, those kind of foundational keystone habits, as we're taught in the lingo, unlock so many other things behind them.
It seems like you could sit and do self-evaluation on all 7 of these circles. Hey, on a 1 to 10 scale, where am I here?
We do that all the time. Have you done that? I mean, or maybe you're just setting me up. That was a softball. Thank you. But yeah, I just ask people, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Don't think about it. No spreadsheets involved. How's your spiritual life? How's your health? How's your personal life? Do you have one? You know, I usually remind our working parents out there, a trip to the spa, the golf course once a quarter does not mean you have a personal life. That means you have an escape hatch, right? Rate yourself. And then I invite people, when they see their scores in all 7 areas, to like now focus on one. I had at different times, James, I've focused on a number like a 7 that I thought I could make a 9. You know, I'm really doing well. Can I be better? But most of the time, I observe others and myself take the area that's the most painful, the one I don't want to look at, and try to turn a 2 or a 3 or even a 1 into a 5.
Yeah.
You know, if I was just average there, my world would be so much better.
No doubt. And I guess you're not going to win all the games all the time. So just knowing, you know, where your opportunity is to grow. I think for us, when we did this, when I looked at this one, it was relationships. And Terry and I just put in a weekly date night now. And then we've done this now for, well, Naomi's 11. So 10 years. Like the book comes out and we put that in and we go on a date once a week. And it's the best thing for our relationship. With as busy as I am, as much as she's got going on, it's an important thing. So I appreciate that. Okay. I want to just know what was it like to work on this? It took a long time. Can you get us behind the curtain and tell us a little bit about the journey of what created the one thing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We spent almost 5 years total. It's probably 4 years and 9 or 10 months. And it started with an essay. We were working on a course for agents to do 36 transactions. You probably taught it at one time.
It is 36-12-3. It's the very first session. The Power of One is the session which led to this book.
That's right. I brought the course in and Gary said, I'd like to write an intro. And he came back with that first chapter. And we all were sitting down, Dave Jinks, who was still alive then, to work on it. And I was like, you know, Gary, I thought this might be a book. And he said the same thing. So that was the birth story. We worked back then with Dave Jinks. He was still an active member of the team. We came up with a rough framework. We brought in 1 full-time researcher at that time. Later, we would have 2 full-time researchers. And we worked on that for a good, I don't know, year and a half, really getting deeper and deeper into the book. And during that period, the Great Recession happened. And I can remember, like, we were sitting down. We got so excited working on this book because we all knew it was going to be big. We had a feeling that we were on to something. And Gary just said, guys, I don't think this book is our one thing right now. I think our one thing is to help our agents through this shift. So I like to say we sat down to write about a book about focus and we got distracted. And that's the truth. We went off and wrote Shift in about 6 months and spent another 6 months promoting it before we got back to the table. But during that time, Vicki, who's on your team, we had a lady named Kyla that was also there for a while. We're actively still out there helping us keep the research moving forward so the project didn't lose all of its momentum. But I'm really proud of working so long. It was like a marathon of marathon. to work on it for that long and then finally see it come to light. And I think it was worth all the effort. I don't think that you have to do 5.5 years or 4.5 years of work to produce a book like this. That's just what it took us to do it. But it was also a work of joy. Kind of the last story about it is when we turned the manuscript in, it would have been about 40% longer than it is today. I think it was going to come in about 450 pages, which is longer than The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, right? That's 396 pages, I think. And our publisher very kindly but very firmly told us, hey guys, if someone buys a book called The One Thing, they don't expect a doorstop. Y'all need to go apply the book to the book and cut out everything that's unnecessary. And in about 30 days, we cut 40% out of the book. And that's what you see now.
It's amazing. And thank you for hitting the pause to write this, because this has impacted a lot of people too. And
hey, where would you be without that book?
I don't know. I don't know. And then I got my MREA down here. So I'll look. You said how many pages? I don't remember. It's 362 pages, MREA. So
okay.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
By the way, there's a bunch of Roman numerals in the front.
There are, yes. Yes.
So I do think it's 396 or close.
Yeah. No, you're right. I'm sure. You're absolutely right.
If that is divisible, every book number is ultimately divided by 16. It's called a signature. There's a little inside knowledge for you.
I love learning stuff. Okay, so last thing, the one takeaway you want someone to have from The One Thing is what?
If you turn over your book, what's on the back of it, James?
I got it right here.
Yep, same thing. We decided that above all else, if they only did one thing, we wanted them to build a habit of asking the question, right? Really, right now at this moment in time, like a lot of people think you can only have one thing. It's really about understanding at any moment in time, you can only have one true priority. So what's the number one thing I need to do this week or today or at this moment? So building the priority habit would be the most transformative thing we could do for our reader. So our hope was, whether they be about why am I here, what's my one thing, or what's my one thing like for what I do, I'm happy with either question. I just want them to ask the question about their life and their work.
That's awesome. You guys are celebrating this. Tell them about the event on April 11th.
Thank you. 4/11. For those of you who know, right, write it down. Genius. You'll know why we picked that date, right?
Genius.
Wink, wink.
Yeah.
But at 4 o'clock Central Time on the 11th of April, we're going to do like a little celebration. Wendy's going to join us. We have the podcast host from The One Thing. Jen Davis, who runs our coaching company, MAPS, is going to be there. And we're also going to do a reveal. Gary and I sat down and we recorded a podcast episode of our favorite learnings from the last 10 years. And I don't think I even strayed into any of those, though I gave James an advanced look, and I'm going to let him, once that's out in the world, share it right here in Pivot. But we will give the first sneak peek on the 11th at 4 o'clock, and we'll also kind of share our favorite learnings. And then that full episode will drop on, I believe, 4/17 on the One Thing podcast.
It'll be great, and we'll put the link in the chat here if somebody wants to participate in that event on April 11th. That'll be awesome. Jay, thanks for taking time to be with us. Congratulations to you and Gary on The One Thing and 10 years of it. We appreciate you so much, and look forward to, I guess, you selling even more copies of this book that's impacting so many people. Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
Hey, and thank you, James. You've made an impact, right? And I'm so happy that you invite me back into this little group where during COVID, you changed a lot of lives. So I always will think of you as someone who stepped up, brought shift back when the world needed it most. And now you get to keep making an impact with this amazing community. So thank you for what you do too.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Thanks everybody for watching. See you next time. Bye.